You're listening to the Telltale channel. Don't forget to check me out on all social media: Patreon, Twitter, Teespring, and Etsy. All links can be found in the description or on my website, telltaleatheist.com. So this article was written by Hemant Mehta. It's on the Friendly Atheist website. It's called, "In New Book, A Prominent Jehovah's Witness Trashes the Faith's Governing Body." I came across this article on the XJW subreddit. To summarize, basically, this guy, Rolf Furuli, was a circuit overseer for like a really long time. And then he was a presiding overseer for a while after health issues prevented him from being a circuit overseer. Now, for those of you who may not know what a circuit overseer is, Jehovah's Witnesses congregations are kind of split up into groups. You have circuits, which usually consist of like 10 or 20 congregations. And then you have districts, which are like 3 to 5 circuits. Now, that information may actually be a little bit out of date. You're going to want to look it up directly if you're really curious, but that's the idea. It's kind of split up into segments. So this guy was a circuit overseer, which means he would travel from Kingdom Hall to Kingdom Hall within the circuit giving talks. He was really high up. I remember when I was little, we would have circuit overseers come to visit our Kingdom Hall, like once every few weeks or once a month or every couple of months or something like that. And they would give a talk there. And everybody always wanted to go in service, like go knocking on doors with the circuit overseer. It was like considered a huge privilege. So this guy was a really, really big deal. And it just so happens that he's pretty famous in the Jehovah's Witness community. He is a scientist with a PhD. And he's one of the only scientists who defends the year 607 in a scientific way. Now, non-Jehovah's Witnesses may not be aware of why 607 is an important date, but just to give a basic summary, it's pretty much how they calculate the year 1914. It's how they arrive at that date. And it is central to their theology. If the year 607 isn't when Babylon fell, then everything about their theology has to change, like from the ground up, everything. It just so happens that we have objective proof that that is not when Babylon fell. It fell in 586 or 587 BCE, not 607 BCE, as the governing body says. I've done a whole video about this with Digital Hammurabi, the YouTube channel. I did it forever ago. It's on my channel if you want to know more about how the whole thing is calculated and everything. But long story short, we have objective proof that it was not 607. And this scientist here, this guy, this PhD, Jehovah's Witness, Rolf Furuli, is one of the only people in the world who defends 607 from a scientific perspective. Now, it's not really based on fact, obviously, because it's not factual. But they hold him up as a scholar who defends that date. Basically, the only scholar who does. So this guy is currently an active Jehovah's Witness. Like right now, he's an active Jehovah's Witness. And he just released a book entitled My Beloved Religion and the Governing Body. So in the book, he defends Jehovah's Witnesses, like to the death. He says that they're right, it's the true religion, and all that other stuff. So he still believes it. But he's criticizing the governing body relentlessly. Let's give the article a read and see what it says here. Dr. Rolf Furuli is a celebrity in parts of the Jehovah's Witness world. The religious group has abysmal rates of formally educated members. 63% of Jehovah's Witness adults have no more than a high school diploma. And that's partly because the organization says higher education is spiritually dangerous. But Furuli, who lives in Norway, has long been the guy they point to as a scholar who shares their beliefs. He's a professor. He publishes papers and books. And he really does. He publishes papers in scientific journals. Like, I looked into the guy. He's legit. He's as legit as they come. Witnesses trot out his name like creationist Ken Ham lauds PhDs on his staff. It lends the group a sort of credibility they wouldn't otherwise deserve. Furuli isn't just a casual Jehovah's Witness believer either. He defends the weird stuff. He supports the ban on blood transfusions. He believes Jerusalem was destroyed in 607 BCE rather than the historically accepted date of 587 BCE, which is a huge deal for Jehovah's Witness believers. He even served as a circuit overseer and district overseer in the 1960s and 70s, meaning he was a local leader of the faith. Yeah, he was a really big deal in the Jehovah's Witness religion. He's the real deal. He's never left the religion. While he opposes their rejection of higher education, that's not a matter of salvation per se, so that's never really diminished his credibility. Although, something I do want to make note of here, I'm surprised that he offered up any opposition at all to the governing body and didn't get disfellowshipped for it. Like, if you disagree with anything the governing body says, literally anything, and you want to die on that hill, they will disfellowship you for it. They will kick you out and remove you from the lives of your family members and your friends. Even something as basic as using the wrong Bible can get you kicked out of the religion, or swearing can get you kicked out, disfellowshipped forever. It doesn't usually lead to that. Like, just something as simple as swearing doesn't usually lead to that. But if it was a hill that you wanted to die on, and you said, I don't believe that it's wrong to do this, I disagree with the governing body on it, they would disfellowship you. So I'm actually really surprised that he opposed their rejection of higher education and never got kicked out. He must not have been terribly vocal about it. Anyway, let's continue reading. That's why it's a big deal that he's about to release a book titled My Beloved Religion and the Governing Body, which isn't available online but can be purchased by sending an email to awatu-publishers at sf-nett.no, in which he both defends the religion and takes a lot of huge swipes at the leadership of the organization. It's really strange because typically when you see books released by people criticizing the governing body, they go all the way and criticize the religion as a whole, and then they're labeled as apostates. They become apostates from that point on, and they just kind of leave the religion entirely. Like, the moment you allow yourself to accept a criticism of the religion, everything else comes crashing down because you have to keep your thoughts perfectly in line with everybody else's thoughts in this group. It's an extremely unified group of people. So I'm honestly kind of surprised he didn't break away from the religion even more. I'm surprised that he actually defends the religion in the book and is only criticizing the governing body and a couple of key points that he doesn't like. Like, he thinks people should get higher education, for example. Anyway, let's continue reading it. Pointing out the problems with Jehovah's Witness leadership is like a Republican senator up for election in 2020 calling out Donald Trump. It's practically an unforgivable sin. As one YouTuber puts it, the one thing you cannot do as a Jehovah's Witness is criticize its leadership. Now, this one YouTuber, I actually clicked the link to see who it was, and it looks like it's GOAT-like personality. Basically 6,000 subscribers. Pretty small, but up-and-coming ex-Jehovah's Witness. I actually knew who they were because they gave an analogy of one of Jehovah's Witnesses' most complex doomsday prophecies using goats. They are up and coming, and it is pretty interesting, their style and their approach at things. You could give it a look. Anyway, let's continue reading this and see what it says. It's practically an unforgivable sin. As one YouTuber put it, the one thing you cannot do as a Jehovah's Witness is criticize its leadership. That YouTuber also asked Furuli if he was worried he would be disfellowshipped for what he wrote, meaning he could be ejected from the faith and cut off from any loved ones who still believe. He responded, I know I will be disfellowshipped. In the book, among other things, he argues that the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses has way too much power. As he writes in the introduction, this is a quote from the book, Today, the 8 men of the governing body functions as a government for Jehovah's Witnesses with unlimited power. They have the power of the doctrines, the assets, and the money, and their words and decisions cannot be questioned. This is a situation that violates a number of Bible principles. It hasn't always been like this. This is something that's been progressing down this road for a long time. Not long ago, each congregation basically owned their own kingdom halls. But the governing body would sometimes loan money to the congregations basically to buy the supplies to build the kingdom halls. Well, now the governing body just straight up owns all of the assets for the entire religion, period, full stop. So it's progressively been getting worse and worse as time goes on. Let's continue reading here. For example, the witnesses have a long list of ways someone could be disfellowshipped. No controversy there. But then there's this sin, causing divisions and promoting sects. SECTS. This would be deliberate action disrupting the unity of the congregation or undermining the confidence of the brothers in Jehovah's arrangement. So if you're undermining the religion, that could be grounds for getting kicked out. But Furuli says Jehovah's arrangement, quote unquote, is effectively determined by the governing body. So they and they alone get to decide if you're a problem who needs to be eradicated. Instead of pointing to an objective violation of Jehovah's Witness rules, the governing body can just say you're sowing discord and that's that, which is certainly a problem when you're publishing criticism of the governing body. He writes in the book, the problem, however, is that the definitions of apostasy are self-serving because it's the governing body who defines what Jehovah's arrangement is, and the definition is that the governing body serves as a government for Jehovah's Witnesses with unlimited power. Thus, any opposition to the governing body is per definition apostasy, because it's undermining the confidence of the brothers in Jehovah's arrangement. Yeah, the bottom line behind this whole thing is there are no checks on the governing body's power, and they are going off the rails and have been for a long time. They took possession of all of the assets of all of the kingdom halls across the world, and they're making more and more strict rules. I guess this guy's starting to realize that and has decided to call it out, which of course means he will be disfellowshipped if he hasn't already. I've been keeping up with the story for about a week now, and I haven't seen anything about him being disfellowshipped yet, but it is coming, I'm sure of it. Anyway, let's continue reading. Furuli also says that because there was no governing body in the first century, the present governing body has no biblical legacy and should be dissolved. No wonder this book is already a source of lots of gleeful discussions on ex-Jehovah's Witness forums. Yeah, the governing body, from my understanding, kind of stems from the Jehovah's Witness history, which is kind of a seedy history. It started out with a president, I guess you could say, Charles Taze Russell, and he was going around from congregation to congregation, basically as a traveling overseer, guiding each congregation and trying to teach them the way that he thought it should be done. And he died October 31st, Halloween night, 1916, I believe. And when he died, there was a massive power struggle between basically the board members and who became the new president, which is Joseph Rutherford. And Joseph Rutherford basically did what you could call a hostile takeover, pretty much. He declared himself lifelong president of the organization and dissolved the board and made all kinds of changes, renamed the religion and banned beards because he didn't want anybody to be reminded of Charles Taze Russell, his predecessor, who had a big bushy beard. Like, the dude was nuts. The religion, as a result of that hostile takeover, was a little bit concerned and didn't feel like power should be concentrated in one spot. So after some time, they had other presidents after Rutherford, Knorr and some others, but eventually they ended up forming the governing body. And that's how it's been ever since. So let's continue reading, see what else it says. I asked Dr. Furuli last night what he hoped for as a result of his book. Besides his own fate, did he think the governing body was capable of changing itself? He told me he was not optimistic. This is a quote from Furuli. "It is difficult for me to answer your questions because I do not know how the governing body will react, and I can't guess. According to the Bible, there are only two forms of apostasy. One, denying that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh, 2 John 7-10. And two, having a corrupted faith and making a sect or a splinter group, Titus 3:10-11. I'm not guilty of this, but I believe in all the doctrines taught by Jehovah's Witnesses and defend these. To point out errors that have been done by the leaders is not apostasy according to the Bible. So if the governing body says that I'm an apostate, they are making a human commandment that is not based on the Bible. That doesn't mean the book serves no purpose, though. If he can get people to question aspects of the faith or even plant seeds that might eventually get them to leave for good, that would be remarkable." I 100% agree. Whether the guy continues to believe in the religion or not is kind of irrelevant to me. The fact that somebody that's high profile is criticizing the governing body is enough for me. I find it really interesting that he decided to do that now, of all times. I hope for the best for him, but being as high profile as he is and calling them out in such direct terms like that is basically a guaranteed way to get disfellowshipped. So good luck to him, good luck to his family, and whether he's on the inside of the religion or not, I'm just glad that he's criticizing him.